Hello there, Gamerinos and Gamerinas! Welcome to UnicornStorm. This is Rady, and today I'm taking a look at Eiyuden Chronicle, 100 Heroes. And I'm gonna jump ahead right now and recommend keeping your Xbox Game Pass subscription for it. I got the PS5 version, so I'm not playing this through the Xbox app on PC or on an actual Xbox. And so I can't really make a real Game Pass recommendation video, but I do think it's worth the price of admission. Eiyuden Chronicle is a throwback JRPG in the vein of Konami's Suikoden series, with series creator Yoshitaka Murayama at the helm, who sadly passed away earlier this year. I never played Suikoden, so I can't attest to how faithful it stays to its spiritual predecessor. I also have not played its prequel teaser thingy, Eiyuden Chronicle Rising, so yeah, I will judge this game completely on its own merit. Now, as a disclaimer, I've played this game for a good few hours so far, but as it is with JRPGs, they more often than not eat up quite a lot of time. These here are my first impressions. I have not seen all the game has to offer, and I don't know if the gameplay loop gets stale over the next couple of hours or more engaging. That said, I don't subscribe to the notion that you have to play for a set amount of time to find the fun. If you had fun with a game for 10 or 15 hours, no matter how much longer it takes to finish it, it was well worth the asking price. Assuming it was priced fair. And if the game is a slog for the first 5 hours, it's completely fair to stop wasting your time and find something better. If you belong to the people who can endure a bad show for 20 episodes just to enjoy a peculiarly good finale, or labor through 50 hours of boring and uninspired gameplay to get to the good parts, well, more power to you. But I don't think it's reasonable to expect anyone to put up with something like this. This game here, though, so far has been fun, and I don't think I wasted my hard-earned money on it. If you are interested in games of this kind, or if you want to find out whether or not you should get this particular game, this video might help you decide, but please don't expect a in-depth review or full-on analysis. Again, these are my first impressions, my raw thoughts about the game, just neatly sorted for your enjoyment. So let's start with the first things we see in this game. The graphics. The game features a quite pleasant art style with very well drawn 2D sprite based characters with simple low FPS animations in colorful and inviting 3D environments. The pixel art sports a lot of detail in different hairstyles and clothing. I really like the look of the different beast people, or the large belt buckle and belt across the werewolf's huge chest, or the uniforms of some of the Imperial officers. And then there's all the different monsters, of course. At times it looks a bit like drawings converted to these low-res sprites, but the art is way too clean for that. Now, for the environments, they vary from highly detailed and beautiful to barren and empty, with many rooms that are just copy and pasted. Aside from the overworld, you never directly control the camera, and while this gives the designers full control over what you are able to see at any point, the game doesn't capitalize on it very often. The perspective mostly stays the same, with a side view perspective or a slightly tilted bird's eye view. I guess with more creative camera angles, a lot more work would have needed to be done with even more sprite variations, but still. If you can't play around with the camera that much, then at least place some interesting things into the frame. And the game does this, at times, with the overgrown techno ruins or giant skeletons in the desert, but most of the time, while exploring a dungeon, you look at the same walls and floors. Well, and then there are times where you can't see anything at all, because a wall shoves itself into the foreground, obscuring the view completely. Other objects disappear and reappear suddenly, the camera bumps and jitters around when traversing caves, textures morph around because the light map or the level of detail or whatever else changes as you pass by them. Things like this shouldn't happen, not in a game that has such a restrictive camera, in a game that isn't that graphically demanding, and especially not in the console version where the game can be optimized for one universal setup. And another thing that kept bugging me was the conspicuously long loading times within and after exiting the menu. Story-wise, the game takes you to a new and rather grounded fantasy world, inhabited by humans and humanoid animals, where the well-trodden youthful rebellion against God gets exchanged for political intrigue with fragile alliances and deception. So, the new popular setting for JRPGs. You assume the role of Noah. Oh god, now I get it. Who becomes leader of a group of mercenaries that take on most odd jobs in the kingdom, or empire, or republic, whatever applies. Escort jobs, dealing with bandits, research expeditions, and during your travels you meet and recruit a bunch of colorful characters. About 100 if the game's title is to be believed. Some join you immediately, some need you to complete a smaller task first, and some require you to help them on a mission or quest. These heroes come in all shapes and sizes, everyone with a unique look and animation and all kinds of different personalities. Stern and honest, wacky and weird, or laid back and generally friendly. And I have to say, so far I like them all. I enjoy the way they are written as well-rounded characters, not riddled with anime tropes like so many modern JRPGs and similar games. And I'm not saying that these characters don't have exaggerated personalities, and of course they fill certain archetypes, which is only natural and even advisable in a game that hands you 100 party members. I mean, you need to be able to discern them at a glance. But these characters are more than just their quirks and mannerisms, and even the funny ones are played straight in a way. They are funny and weird, and it's not the world that bends over backwards to make them fit in. They do stand out, and it's only because the protagonist is just so damn good-natured and nice that he gets along with each and every one of them. The writing so far has been really engaging and intriguing. And yeah, refreshingly light on all the tropes. All the characters, those in our party as well as important NPCs, are well-rounded. No one acts incompetent in a way that's out of character. There are some hilarious scenes where a character might behave rather dumb, but it's believable. And so far, I haven't encountered any of these awful mystery box dialogues, where the story withholds information from the player in an unnatural way, or where characters never even think to ask simple questions. Characters in the story actively and deliberately and cunningly deceive each other, or have an honest conversation. They don't withhold crucial information, they don't beat around the bush, but they're also not blatantly spouting exposition. Conversations flow naturally and the characters develop some actual chemistry. I mean, I don't think this will be the case for all of them. I'm pretty sure some of the character dynamics, especially with optional characters, will be more surface level. But still, the character writing really surprised me. And so far, character interactions have been the brunt of the plot. But those interactions often happen through awkward, slow and under-choreographed cutscenes. Ignoring the big story moments that are rather well presented, often the game stops the action just to load a scene where the characters speak a handful of sentences while standing in place and then gameplay resumes. This could have been done with just a dialogue box. I don't need to see my whole party standing around doing nothing. The leader completely suffices during those moments. Yeah, the presentation is a bit hit and miss. Maybe it has to do with all the possible party compositions, and so random cutscenes try to go easy on the moving parts to keep the workload low. But again, if that's the case, don't even start a cutscene at all, and just give me the dialogue box with the different character portraits. I mean, the game even does this during exploration. And while the main locations, the big cities and the prominent landmarks look really good, stunning at times, many locations get a bit samey and stale rather quickly. There's not much going on in villages, so the copy-pasted rooms and reused textures lost their charm after a while, and the dungeons tend to drag quite a bit. They are mostly simple labyrinths with unnecessary winding paths that sometimes end in a dead end with a treasure chest or lead ever so slowly towards the current objective. And sometimes there's a bit of simple puzzle solving along the way, over and over again, without much variation. There's just too little happening in between fights. The fights themselves, though, are pretty fun. It's turn-based battles at its finest. You have a party of up to 6 heroes and you assign all commands before they get executed according to turn order. You can see when each combatant acts, and some maneuvers affect the turn order, a little bit. So you have to be mindful of when your characters are ready to attack and when the enemies take their turn in order to quickly dispose of them while keeping the damage to your team as low as possible. For that you can use standard attacks, classic magic spells that consume magic points, or special skills that use SP, which you build up over the course of the battle. And then there's even hero combos, where 2 or maybe even more heroes later in the game simultaneously use their skills to dish out massive attacks against the enemies. And with such a huge roster, there will be quite a few different combinations to unlock hero combos. I'd say Chrono Trigger is still the benchmark for this system, in terms of versatility and variation. I Am Setsuna stood out with its sheer amount of character combo attacks, at the cost of depth though. And Sea of Stars breathed new life into the system with the elemental points build up. This game does more of the same with it. It's fun to discover the different combo attacks, and presentation-wise, they continue the excellent characterization of all the heroes. But it's for the most part just slightly more useful or maybe situationally more useful special attacks that use up multiple characters' turns. But with all those well animated attacks and those really well drawn characters, the battles in this game are a real treat. It looks really good, especially since all the attacks of both allies and enemies kinda flow into one another. The fighters don't statically wait for everyone else to take their turn. I mean, technically they do, but the next character in line attacks slightly before the previous one has finished their attack, and combined with a dynamically panning and zooming camera, the fighting becomes really exhilarating. But this wouldn't be me if I didn't find a problem even with such an enjoyable battle system. You see, this game utilizes a front and back row system, with at most 3 characters in any row. Combatants in the back row can't be easily targeted by many characters, so there comes a bit of planning and tactics with this system. Defeating the enemies in the front row forces the back row to the front. But if a hero can't attack the back row, then you can't even assign the command. And pretty often enemies in the back row have the highest initiative, so they get to attack before you can clear out the front row. And you can't go strategically about it. If you could issue the command and risk it not being able to get executed, then there would be some tactics to dealing with fast enemies in the back row. Or if you only select a row to attack and the combatant automatically targets the frontmost enemy. But all you can do is attack the front row and hope that some of the back row enemies are among the random targets once the front row enemies have been defeated. I'd even prefer if the game had no random target selection, like in Final Fantasy I, where your characters attacked the empty air where the enemy had been standing shortly before, in exchange for targeting enemies that are out of reach. Though I guess at the end of the day, this is on purpose. Some characters seem to be able to attack enemies in the back row, and it's not always ranged attacks. It's a bit arbitrary and only communicated with a small symbol on the party screen. S for short range, M for medium and L for long range. And this determines how far this hero's attacks reach. Long-ranged heroes can attack the enemy back row even when they themselves are standing in the back row. And short-ranged heroes can't attack at all if they're not in the front row. So since you can't pre-plan to attack currently out of reach enemies, party composition becomes even more important. It's no use to fill your ranks with hard-hitting short-range fighters in an area with fast enemies attacking from the back row. So yeah, it isn't really a problem with the battle system itself, more of a preference. And with more and more heroes joining your ranks, and with more skills and attacks you unlocked, your options in dealing with hard to reach enemies grow more plentiful. So I guess it even supports themes of character growth and leadership. Some of the fights even throw in some extra mechanics, and while they can be quite fun and keep things fresh, others are just horrendous. Who thought it was a good idea to give you a random chance to deal damage to a hard-hitting enemy who acts multiple times per round? This shit might sound fun on paper, but shouldn't have gotten past playtesting. Maybe I missed something, a hint or something like that, but I picked the wrong option disproportionately often, so I did not have a good time. But other than that, I am quite happy with the game. It looks nice, the music is fine, not too special but also not bad or irritating. The Japanese voice acting is really great, though to be fair, it would be more of a surprise if it weren't. I'm looking forward to discovering all the different heroes and get familiar with them. It's a fine game, far from perfect, but genuine in a way. Just plain fun with surprisingly well written dialogues, without devolving into a text wall simulator. Go for it if you enjoy JRPGs, especially the classics. But no matter what you do, have an awesome day. This has been Rady, and I hope to see you again on the next game.